Welcome to the Daily Brain Podcast. Want to elevate your language and stand out in conversations? Let today's word be your secret weapon.
Ooh, I like that. A secret weapon.
It's apathetic.
Okay.
I think we all use this word, but I wonder if we really understand its full meaning. What do you think?
It's a great question. And you're right. Apathetic often gets thrown around casually, but there's a real depth to this word that we often miss.
For sure. I was checking out the Cambridge Dictionary, and they define apathetic as showing no interest or energy and unwilling to take action, especially over something important. That last part really stuck with me.
Yeah, that's the key, isn't it? Apathy goes beyond just being bored or uninterested. It suggests a detachment from things that genuinely matter. It can be a sign of something deeper going on.
So how is apathy different from just feeling, well, blah sometimes?
Think of it this way. Boredom is a fleeting feeling like being stuck in a dull meeting.
Right.
Apathy, on the other hand, is a more pervasive lack of motivation or enthusiasm, especially when it comes to things that should matter.
So like if you're feeling apathetic about your job, it's not just that you're bored with your tasks.
Yeah.
It's more like you've lost your passion for the work itself.
Exactly. And in some cases, according to Dr. Daniel Fox's YouTube video, people may even use this apathy as a coping mechanism to protect themselves from difficult emotions or situations.
That's really interesting. So instead of facing a problem head on, someone might just shut down emotionally.
Precisely. They try to avoid the pain by becoming indifferent. But here's the thing, and Dr. Fox really drives this point home.
Yeah.
Using apathy as a coping mechanism doesn't actually work.
Why not? It seems like it would offer some temporary relief.
It might seem that way at first, but it ultimately backfires.
Oh.
Avoiding your emotions doesn't make them go away. They just fester and grow stronger. Plus, apathy leads to decreased motivation overall, which impacts all areas of your life.
Oh, I see. So even if you're feeling apathetic about one specific thing, it can spill over and make you feel unmotivated about everything else?
Right.
That makes a lot of sense.
And there's another danger here. When we're apathetic, we're not processing information the way we should. Dr. Fox talks about how this can lead to pro-decision making. You're essentially flying blind because you're tuning out important information.
Okay, that's scary. It's like ignoring a warning light on your car's dashboard.
Exactly.
You might think you're avoiding a problem, but you're actually making it worse.
That's a great analogy. And this avoidance can become a vicious cycle, leading to negative self-talk, doubt, even self-hate. It can really distort your view of yourself and the world.
So we've talked about apathy as a coping mechanism, but are there other situations where it might show up?
Absolutely. Apathy can also be a symptom of underlying medical conditions. Take dementia, for example.
Okay.
The UCSF Memory and Aging Center lists apathy as one of the common symptoms.
Wow, I never would have connected those two things. Dementia is usually associated with memory loss, not apathy.
It's true that memory loss is a hallmark of dementia, but apathy is often present as well. And it's not just a personality quirk. The UCSF resource explains that apathy in dementia is often linked to damage in specific brain regions like the prefrontal cortex.
And what does the prefrontal cortex do?
The prefrontal cortex plays a crucial role in things like planning, decision-making, and motivation. So damage to this area can directly impact a person's ability to initiate activities or engage with their surroundings.
So it's not that the person with dementia doesn't care anymore.
Right.
It's that their brain is literally making it difficult for them to engage.
Exactly. And I think that's so important for caregivers to understand.
It must be incredibly challenging to witness that shift in a loved one and know that it's not their fault.
Absolutely. But the UCSF resource does offer some hope.
Okay.
They emphasize that understanding and responding to the person's needs rather than getting frustrated with their behavior can make a huge difference.
So instead of saying, come on, let's go for a walk, maybe it's more about gently inviting them to join you and making it as easy as possible for them to participate.
Exactly. It's about meeting them where they are rather than trying to force them back to who they were before.
Right.
Speaking of different ways apathy can manifest, I was fascinated by an article titled Psychopathology of Social Isolation.
Okay.
It discusses how social withdrawal, particularly in youth, can be a form of apathy as well.
Really? I have to admit, I always thought of apathy as something that affected older adults.
It's a common misconception, but apathy can affect people of all ages. The article explains that while not all socially withdrawn youth are apathetic, some choose to disengage from the real world and immerse themselves in the online world instead.
It's like they're finding connection and meaning online rather than in face-to-face interactions. I can see how that could happen in today's digital age.
You're right, it's definitely a factor. And the article points out that this can be a complex issue with various underlying causes, ranging from mental health conditions to simply feeling more comfortable in the digital space. But even in these cases, the core element is often a lack of motivation or interest in engaging with the real world.
So even though it might look different on the surface, it's still apathy at its core.
Exactly. And it's a reminder that apathy can look very different depending on the individual. The same article highlights how people with different personality disorders experience and express apathy in unique ways.
Okay, I'm curious. How would that work?
For example, someone with schizoid personality disorder, which is characterized by a preference for solitude, might be perfectly content in isolation. They might not experience their lack of social interaction as a problem at all.
So it's not that they're necessarily unhappy or unfulfilled, it's just their natural inclination.
Precisely. But then you have someone with avoidant personality disorder who might deeply desire connection but be too afraid of rejection to pursue it. That's heartbreaking. So they're experiencing apathy, not because they don't want to connect, but because their fear is holding them back.
Exactly. It shows that apathy isn't always about a lack of desire. Sometimes it's about a barrier, whether internal or external, that prevents action.
This is making me realize that the word apathetic has so many layers. It's not as simple as I thought.
It really isn't. And to add another layer of complexity, the article Symptoms of Apathy and Passivity in Dementia introduces a distinction between apathy and passivity. They argue that these two terms, while often used interchangeably, actually have distinct meanings.
Wait, I'm confused. Aren't those basically the same thing?
That's what I initially thought too.
Yeah.
But they make a compelling argument. They explain that while both apathy and passivity involve reduced engagement, apathy is more about an internal lack of motivation. In other words, the person simply doesn't feel like doing anything.
Okay, so what about passivity? Passivity, on the other hand, is more about a lack of interaction with the external environment. So a passive person might not necessarily lack internal motivation. They might just be unresponsive or inactive in response to external stimuli.
So someone could be apathetic, but still engage with the world around them, while someone who is passive is essentially withdrawn.
That's a great way to put it. And the article emphasizes that this distinction is important because apathy and passivity often require different approaches for intervention. You've got it. And this distinction really highlights the nuance of these terms. We often use apathetic as a catch-all for any kind of lack of engagement, but there can be subtle yet important differences in what's driving that lack of engagement.
This deep dive is definitely making me rethink how I use the word apathetic. It's way more complex than I initially realized.
Isn't it? It's a great example of how language can evolve and become more nuanced over time. And that's why these deep dives are so valuable. They help us uncover those layers of meaning.
Totally. So you've given us a lot to think about when it comes to the meaning of apathetic. But why does this all matter for our listeners? How can they apply this knowledge in their own lives?
Well, I think the first step is awareness. Recognizing apathy in yourself or others can be crucial for addressing any underlying issues.
So if you're noticing a persistent lack of motivation or enthusiasm, it might be a sign that you need to dig a little deeper and figure out what's really going on.
Exactly. And if you're seeing signs of apathy in a loved one, particularly an older adult, it could be a sign of a medical condition like dementia.
Right.
In those cases, seeking professional help is essential.
It's also about being more mindful of how we use language. Now that we understand that apathy is more than just disinterest, we can use the word more accurately and thoughtfully.
I couldn't agree more. It's about moving beyond simplistic labels and engaging in more nuanced conversations.
For example, instead of saying, my teenager is so apathetic, you might say, my teenager seems withdrawn and disconnected lately. I'm concerned about their lack of motivation and engagement, and I'm wondering if there's something more going on.
That's an excellent example. It shows empathy and a genuine desire to understand the root of the issue rather than just labeling the behavior.
And thinking more broadly, understanding apathy can help us address societal issues as well. For instance, political apathy can be a major obstacle to progress. If people don't care enough to vote or engage in civic discourse, it's hard to create meaningful change.
That's a crucial point. Apathy can be a symptom of systemic issues such as inequality, a sense of powerlessness, or a lack of faith in the political process.
So it's not just about individuals being lazy or uncaring. It can be a reflection of deeper societal problems.
Precisely. And that's why exploring the meaning of apathy is so important. It offers a window into both individual and collective struggles.
This has been a truly enlightening deep dive. I feel like I've gained a much deeper understanding of apathy, and I hope our listeners feel the same way.
Me too. And as always, we want to leave our listeners with a thought-provoking question. We've talked extensively about the negative aspects of apathy, but is there ever a time when a little bit of apathy might actually be beneficial?
That's an intriguing question. I've never considered that before.
Could there be situations where a degree of detachment or disengagement might be helpful for our well-being?
I'm not sure. What are you thinking?
Well, perhaps there are times when stepping back from a situation emotionally or otherwise can allow us to gain clarity or protect ourselves from unnecessary stress.
Or maybe it can help us conserve our energy for the things that truly matter to us. If we're constantly bombarded with information and demands on our attention, a bit of selective apathy might be a necessary survival strategy.
Exactly. So the question we leave you with today is this. Is apathy always a negative force, or could it, in certain contexts, be a tool for self-preservation, resilience, or even growth?
That's a fantastic takeaway. It's like we're flipping the script on the whole concept of apathy. I love that idea. It's a reminder that even a word like apathetic, which seems so negative at first glance, can open up these really interesting and thought-provoking conversations.
Precisely, and that's the power of language. The more deeply we understand the words we use, the more effectively we can communicate and connect with others.
And that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah.
Building those bridges of understanding, even if it starts with a word as seemingly simple as apathetic.
Absolutely. So the next time you hear someone use the word apathetic, I encourage you to pause for a moment and consider the full spectrum of its meaning. Is it just simple disinterest? Or is it a coping mechanism, a symptom of something deeper? Or maybe it's a deliberate choice for self-preservation or even personal growth.
It's like you're giving us a secret decoder ring for the English language.
I like that.
So to all our listeners out there, we challenge you to use this new decoder ring. Pay attention to how you and others use the word apathetic, now that you have a deeper understanding of its nuances. It's not just a synonym for uninterested. It's a word that can unlock some really insightful conversations.
And who knows, maybe those conversations will lead to a shift in perspective, a new understanding, or even a positive change in the world.
Beautifully said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into apathetic. Until next time, keep those brains buzzing.